we're going to continue our reading of The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. Diggory and his uncle are both in trouble. You may think the animals were very stupid not to see at once that Uncle Andrew was the same kind of creature as the two children in the cabbie, but you must remember that the animals knew nothing about clothing. They thought that Polly's frock and Diggory's Norfolk suit and the cabbie's bowler hat were as much as part of them as their own fur and feathers. They wouldn't have known even that those three were all the same kind if they hadn't spoken to them, and if Strawberry had not seemed to think so. And Uncle Andrew was a great deal taller than the children and a good deal thinner than the cabbie. He was all in black except for his white waistcoat and a gray mop of hair on his head. He didn't look anything like the other three humans, so it was only natural that they should be puzzled. Worst of all, he didn't seem able to talk. When he had tried to. When the bulldog spoke to him, he held out his hand, shaking, and gasped, "Oh, good doggy then, poor old fellow." But the beasts could not understand him any more than he could understand them. They didn't hear any words, only a vague, sizzling noise. Perhaps it was just as well as they didn't, for no dog that I ever knew, least of all a talking dog of Narnia, likes to be called good doggy, any more than you like being called my little man. Then Uncle Andrew dropped down dead faint. "There," said a warthog. "It's only a tree. I thought so." The bulldog, who had been sniffing Andrew all over, raised its head and said, "It's an animal, certainly an animal, and probably the same kind as the others." "I don't see that," said one of the bear. "An animal wouldn't just roll over like that. We're animals. We don't roll over. We stand up like this." He rose to his hind legs and took a step backward and tripped over a low branch and fell flat on his back. "The third joke, the third joke, the third joke," said the jackdaw in great excitement. "I think it's a sort of tree," said the warthog. "If it's a tree," said the other bear, "there might be bees." "I'm not sure it's a tree," said the badger. "I had a sort of idea it was trying to speak before it toppled over." "That was only the wind in its branches," said the warthog. "You surely don't mean," said the jackdaw to the badger, "that you think it's a talking animal? It didn't say any words." "And yet you know," said the elephant. "And yet you know it might be an animal of some kind. Mightn't the whitish lump at its end be sort of a face? And couldn't those holes be eyes and a mouth? No nose, of course, but then, one mustn't be so narrow-minded. Very few of us have what could exactly be called a nose." She squinted down the length of her own trunk with pardonable pride. "I object to that remark very strongly," said the bulldog. "The elephant is quite right," said the tapir. "I tell you what," said the donkey. "Perhaps it's an animal that can't talk but thinks it can." "Can it be made to stand up?" asked the elephant thoughtfully. She took the limp form of Uncle Andrew gently in her trunk and set that 2 half sovereign, 3 half-crowns, and a 6-pence fell out of his pocket. But it was no use. Uncle Andrew merely collapsed again. "There," said several voices. "It isn't an animal at all. It's not even alive." "I tell you it is an animal," said the bulldog. "Smell for yourself." "Smelling isn't everything," said the elephant. "Why?" said the bulldog. "If a fellow can't trust his nose, what is he to trust?" "Well, perhaps his brains," she replied mildly. "I object to that remark very strongly," said the bulldog. "Well, we must do something about it," said the elephant, "because it might be the Nevil, and it must be shown to Aslan. What do most of us think? Is it an animal or something of the tree kind?" "Tree, tree," said a dozen voices. "Very well," said the elephant. "Then, if it's a tree, it wants to be planted. We must dig a hole." The 2 moles settled that part of the business pretty quickly. There was something to dispute to which way Uncle Andrew ought to be put into the hole, and he had a very narrow escape from being put in head first. Several animals said his legs must be branches, and therefore the gray fluffy thing, they meant his head, must be the root. But then the others said that the forked end of him was muddier and that it must be spread out more, just as roots do. So finally, he was planted the right way up. When they had patted him down, it came up to his knees. It looks dreadfully withered, said the donkey. Of course it wants something, said the elephant. I think I might say, meaning no offense to anyone present, that perhaps for that sort of work, my kind of nose. I object to that remark very strongly, said the bulldog. The elephant walked quietly over to the river, filled her trunk with water, and came back to attend to Uncle Andrew. The sagacious animal went on doing this until gallons had been squirted all over him, and water was running out of the skirts of his frock coat, as if he had been put in a bath with all his clothes on. In the end, it revived him. He awoke from his faint. What awakening it was! But we must leave him to think over his wicked deed and turn to more important things. Strawberry trotted on with Diggory on his back until the noise of the other animals died away, and now the little group of Aslan and his chosen counselors were quite close. Diggory knew that he couldn't possibly break in on a solemn meeting, but there was no need to do so. At a word from Aslan, the he-elephant, the ravens, and all the rest of them drew aside. Diggory slipped off the horse and found himself face to face with Aslan. And Aslan was bigger and more beautiful and more brightly golden and more terrible than he had thought. He dared not look into his eyes. We will continue on the next little video.